If you want to know how to get a world-class education at the price of a cup of coffee, stay with me. Hi and welcome to the Uncon School at howtobecomeaprofessor.com, the web show to learn from unconventional professors and experts. My name is Stefan and I'm your host. Today you're going to learn how to hack your education, your learning, literally. My guest is today Megan Gebhardt. She's a seeker of serendipity and a good conversation. In 2010, she launched 52 Cups of Coffee, a year-long experiment where each week for a year she had coffee with someone she didn't know and wrote about what she learned in the process at 52cups.com. The project took her to 7 different countries and 29 cities. She had conversations with thought leaders like Seth Godin and Steve Wozniak, along with everyday heroes like teachers, small business owners, and students. After spending a year working at a San Francisco startup, Megan is back with a new round of 52 Cups that will include conversations across the US, Australia, and Asia. All right, Megan, thank you so much for taking your time for this interview. I feel so stoked that you got the time to talk with me. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
All right, the very first question I'd like to ask you is, what were the most important lessons, the most important learned lessons, and which specific lessons did you actually implement in your life and why?
So I learned a lot, and so this question is especially challenging, but I'll answer it for you. I think the overarching theme that was really helpful going into it was I was so overwhelmed with uncertainty when I started the project. I was getting ready to graduate from college and go out into this world. And the fear of trying to make the right decision and the right career path and make all the right moves after graduation was just so overwhelming to me. And I think that was partially what subconsciously inspired the project. And what I really loved about all these conversations I had is that one of the questions I frequently asked to probably 90% of the people is what you're doing now what you thought you would be doing when you left college? And the answer to 90% of the time was no. And this led to a really beautiful story about how they got to where they were at and all the beautiful twists and turns and learnings that they had along the way. And I think I came out of the project understanding that life is filled with uncertainty and you're never going to erase that uncertainty. But if you can really find a way to embrace it and almost seek out that uncertainty, and you trust that you're resourceful and perseverant and smart enough to manage those challenges, you're going to turn out okay. The uncertainty is not something to be absolutely terrified about. So that was the good overarching goal, but some of the specific ones that I really liked. I had a conversation with Seth Godin here in Brooklyn almost 2 years ago to the date. And something that he said to me that really stuck with me was, I failed so many times by the time I was 30. I failed more times in my 20s than people will fail in their entire lives. Right. And what he said with me was, you need to go out into the world and you need to fail. You need to find ways to fail. And to answer your question about how I enact those in my life, for a year and a half, those words kept ringing true to me. You need to fail. But I was still so afraid to fail at anything. Thinking that I was this perfectionist trying to be so good at everything. And finally, a year or 2 years after he said those words to me, I'm really starting to see the value in failure and not intentionally going out and trying to fail. But what he was saying to me was take big risks. And you probably will fail in taking those big risks, but within those risks will be really incredible learnings. And those learnings will make you smarter, and those learnings will make you resilient. So the next time you go and try to tackle something big, you're more prepared to do it. And then another really wonderful lesson for me as a very driven, ambitious person that also had a lot of stress and anxiety as a result of being so driven and ambitious was Cup 19, Stefan Olander, who is the VP of Digital Sports at Nike. It's a quick note about how I came to meet him and why it's so important to reach out and try to grow your network. Cup 9 was a professor in the state of Michigan where I was living. Right. And so we had coffee together. He's a marketing professor. We became friends. We stayed in contact afterwards. And we actually ran into each other at an event, at a TEDx conference in Detroit. And he said, well, you're graduating. What kind of companies are you interested in? And I gave him a list, and one of the companies I was interested in was Nike. And he said, oh, I have a friend at Nike. And I didn't realize that his friend was the VP of digital sports. Si-hwan is the person behind the Nike Fuel Band and all their amazing apps.
Wow.
And so you never know who knows who or who's willing to help you. And so if you create genuine relationships with people, it's really amazing what opportunities that can lead to. But back to the lesson I learned from Si-hwan, I met up with him at the Nike headquarters in Oregon, and we had this long conversation, and the final question I asked him was, is there anything you wish you could go back and tell your 22-year-old self?
Right.
And he said, I don't have any regrets. I don't think it's positive or helpful to have any regrets, but I truly believe that I could have been just as successful without working as hard. And what he wasn't saying to me was be lazy or don't work hard or take long vacations, but what he was saying is there's this sweet spot, using the Nike analogy. There are athletes that get into this flow where they're working hard, but they're not working too much. And he said that he oftentimes works that extra when you're working hard and you're being productive, but he went one step further where you're really pushing yourself and really forcing the work. And he said he thought that was a productive way to work, but really what happened was he just overworked himself, which was less productive than finding that sweet spot of working hard but not overworking. And the benefit of finding that sweet spot is he has a wife and 3 kids, and he said, I could have stopped and smelled the roses and spent more time with them. So all of that to say, I think the big lessons that came out of it, or kind of how I summed it up in my final post from the first round, was that you need to have the curiosity to explore what you want to do, the courage to do that, and then the perseverance and dedication to do it well. And if you can really focus on those 3 things, life has a way of sort of working out. And to go back to the points that I shared, you just have to take big risks and not be afraid to fail, but also make sure you're working smart and enjoying the ride. Because if you're just pushing yourself all the time, that's not the point of living. I mean, you want to have that success, but you also want a meaningful, well-balanced life. So those are some of the many, many lessons I took from the project.
Okay, awesome. Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing them, Megan. The next question is more specific or more practical in a way that I'd like to know, how do you select your interview partners? Right? How do you identify interesting people?
When I started the project, I had no idea what was going to happen or how things were going to go.
Right.
And I was really active on Twitter at the time, and so there were some people that I really admired from afar that were in the Detroit community or the mid-Michigan community. So I would say in the first 25 people I talked to, half of them were just interesting people on Twitter or interesting people on campus that I reached out to and said, I admire you, I'm doing this project, I would love to talk to you. The other half, and this was a really, really amazing way to meet interesting people, was just using recommendations. So people that knew me and knew about the project would sometimes, without me even asking, would say, I'm friends with President Simon, the president of Michigan State University where I went to school, or I have a friend who runs a company in Lansing and you have to meet that friend. So half of the people just came out of recommendations. So between reaching out to people in the area and then recommendations, that was a big chunk of it. And then in the later half, as I got more comfortable reaching out to people, I really just started identifying people that I had some sort of connection to. An affiliation. A lot of people were affiliates of Michigan State, so I knew that they would be interested in talking to a fellow Spartan. And other people were just, like Seth Godin was just someone who I kind of worked up the courage to say, I'm going to send him an email and tell him my project and tell him how much I admire him and see how he responds. Kind of with the mentality that if he says yes, awesome, I have this great person to talk to, and if he says no, I mean, what did I really lose by taking a risk and talking to him? And I think the key to reaching out to people, and people that are prominent in the community, not necessarily celebrities or really just big name famous people, but just really smart people in the industry that you want to talk to, people with the knowledge that you're seeking. If you can get an email address and send them a very genuinely interested email saying, I'm Megan and this is what I'm trying to do, and I admire you for this reason, and I would love to talk to you for this specific purpose. A lot of people are very, very receptive to that. I think people really love to share their experiences and talk about what they know with other people that have similar passions. And so the success rate of just blindly emailing people was very high. What really helped with people that were busier or a little bit more prominent or might not have known me as well were to find someone that was willing to introduce you. So if you can find a mutual friend that will send you that introduction, that's so powerful for getting interviews with interesting people or people that have busier schedules.
Okay, awesome. That's thank you so much. It's very, very helpful. Could you share maybe with us the specific or maybe verbatim interview request mail that you have been sending to people?
So, yeah, absolutely. I think what helped me was that I had this interesting project. And basically, there are only 52 slots in this project that I'm doing.
Right.
And every email I sent really communicated that I think you're great and wonderful, and I want you to be in one of these 52 spots. Right. That being said, I don't think you need to launch this huge blog to get in interviews with interesting people.
Right.
I think the key is to be, this is probably very close to the emails I would send. For example, Wanda Herndon was Cup in the 30s. I think she was Cup 33, and she was the former VP of Global Marketing for Starbucks. So for a lot of years, she was Howard Schultz's right-hand woman for global marketing. Right. And she was a Spartan, so I was fortunate that we had a mutual friend who was willing to introduce me. But then my follow-up email really drove home the point. I started the email as, I'm Megan Gebhardt, I'm a senior at Michigan State, and I'm doing this project. I found you through so-and-so, and I'm really inspired by the work you've done. And I had researched her, and I had watched a couple interviews, YouTube video interviews of her. I had read some articles about her. So I had done my research, and I communicated that I was really inspired by the work that she was doing. So I'm sure that I mentioned, as a female business leader yourself, and I'm interested in the world of business, I was really inspired by this YouTube clip, and I mentioned the YouTube clip and then said, I'm going to be out in Seattle, and I would love to meet with you. And then I made sure to communicate that it was going to be a short meeting. I only asked for a half of an hour over time, and that I was willing to be flexible for a time and place that worked for her. And then at the end of the meeting, or at the end of the email, I just said, I really appreciate your time and consideration and look forward to hearing from you. And so the email was, I didn't presume that she would say yes, and I didn't put on pressure to make her say yes. I just wanted to communicate. I thought she was really fantastic. I thought that we had shared similar passions, and I would love to meet her for the project.
Okay, awesome. That's so helpful. Thank you so much. I think, most people they are probably too afraid to send an email to a very famous person because they already assume that they're receiving a negative answer, right? And as you mentioned before, you have nothing to lose, right? So you only can win or nothing, right? And the second thing, which is also very important that you mentioned, is really to keep it short and precise and concise and crisp, and also to give the other person the opportunity also to say no, so your email request doesn't come along across too harsh. Yeah. Yes,
absolutely. And the other important thing for people that are pursuing different careers, I talk to famous people and really well-known thought leaders, but I also talk to local business people and small entrepreneurs and people that weren't being written about in the New York Times. But the value from talking to those people was so incredible, especially the people that were in industries that I really cared about, right, or people that were doing things I was really passionate about. So I think if you want to start reaching out to talk to people, which is a great idea because it creates so many opportunities, you don't have to don't think that you have to talk to really, amazing people. You can talk to just local, everyday people that are doing things that you want to do. And those people, if you're pursuing a certain path, reaching out to those professors or reaching out to other students or reaching out to people that, 5 years ago were in your specific academic program or whatever it might be, those people are going to be really receptive to reaching out or to talking to you because you're very similar. So absolutely, aim big and try to reach out to really amazing, famous people, but also just reach out to really amazing people that are in and around your community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the advice. It's very inspiring. So if you guys love this interview with Megan and her project, please check out her website 52cups.com. And if you like this episode and if you would like to learn more inspiring stuff from academics, experts, and professors, please check out our YouTube channel or visit us at howtobecomeaprofessor.com. Megan Gebhardt, thank you so much for taking your time. It was a pleasure.